Salutations, Globehead Sheeple. Today on Meta Sheep Slaughterhouse, I, Dr. Cancer MD, will be drinking one of my famous, all-natural, organic, and delicious smoothies that can cure AIDS and make you communicate with goats. Doesn't that look delicious? Oh, that looks so tasty. Boy, this is gonna go right down the hatch, I tell you what. Cheers, Globehead Sheeple. That is so tasty and delicious. Alright, let's do some Runick Stun. Let's get right into the deck profile. So since the ban list, people are kind of scrambling to figure out how to replace the two lost skill drains, and they're playing some cards which I don't think are all that great. I'm not playing any of those weird cards. I'm definitely playing some different floodgates than before, but we'll just show you exactly what I'm doing. The main deck, I'm not playing any monsters in the main deck, so that's what I'm doing differently a little bit. I don't think Mono, Watto, and Spectre Border or Thunder King are particularly bad. They just suffer from some similar weaknesses. They all lose to Droplet, Imperm, stuff like that, and your back row floodgates don't have that issue. Mono Watto is not good against Desiree, so that's why I'm not running that this format. It literally does nothing to help against that card, and that's just like the biggest problem for us right now. So without any further ado, I'll get into the main deck. So no monsters, like I said, but all the runic stuff is pretty much standard for the most part. Triple tip, triple freezing, triple flashing, triple destruction, triple slumber, one smiting, and one golden drop. That's my runic ratios, nothing too crazy. I don't play dispelling because it's just not needed really, and it's definitely the worst name by far. It just doesn't really get you any mileage. Usually when I use it, it's just another name. Then we got double fountain and one terraforming. I actually, even as a runic player myself, I wanted this card to go to 1. I thought the runic engine should receive some type of hits just to reduce the popularity of it in the meta, because I don't like really playing decks that other people are playing. So I thought fountain should have taken a hit, but alas it didn't. And then for the draw spells, I got one demise. Obvious, this card's insane. And probably the most controversial slot in the deck. People always fight me, but 3 desires is correct. I just think it's correct. The math on this card, if you look it up, it's perfect to play 3 copies. Yes, sometimes it will screw you. Yes, sometimes you'll draw desires into desires, or you'll banish valuable things. But the odds of you just drawing 2 good cards are much higher than those chances of you hurting yourself. And there's been plenty of cases where I've banished both of my fountains and all of my tips, and I've still won the game. This is not one of those decks where you auto-lose with that. As long as you have floodgates on your field or some way to stall out your opponent and generate card advantage, you'll be fine even if you lose those cards. So I do believe Desires is correct at 3. You can fight me all you want, but I'm going to die on that hill. Triple copies of Duality, mostly here just to thin the deck and shuffle the deck for your runic draws to be good. I'm still main decking triple copies of Evenly Matched. This is sort of the flex spot, but a lot of people are ending on really big boards, and there's not as many Omni Negates in the meta besides Desiree, as I mentioned, and maybe Verudis. But for decks that don't end on those, or if you're able to force those out with runic spells, then this card's really, really good at cracking boards. This deck can definitely struggle to go second, and Evenly in the main deck helps clean that right up. I see people playing it in a lot of other runic decks, but I don't see too many stun builds playing it in the main. For the floodgates, this is like the biggest change now, is triple copies of Defissure and triple copies of Grave. So this is part of the way that I'm replacing the 2 skill drains. A lot of people are on these 2 cards, Powersink Stone and TYRANT'S TIRADE. Now, I don't think these cards are terrible, but I do think they're not great. Powersink, the problem with this card is that it takes too much. The problem with both these cards is they take setup to be effective. So this card, your opponent gets 2 monster effects, and it resets every turn. So every turn, your opponent gets closer and closer to outing your stuff. This is not skill drain at all. The 2 effect part of the card, the fact that they still get 2 monster effects is very, very important. A lot of people can make something like SP without doing too many effects. And even if they don't do it, it doesn't slow them down as long as you want it to, because every turn they get 2 more monster effects. If this is your only floodgate, that's going to become a problem. So I don't think this card's that great. TYRANT'S TIRADE, I also don't think is great. This one is, the problem with this one is that it takes setup to use. You need to use Sleipnir, and your Sleipnir's effect to summon a token needs to resolve in order for this card to be live. So if your opponent, it's very telegraphed. So if you activate Sleipnir's effect on your opponent and they have Imperm or Droplet or anything, they're going to hit it, and then you have a completely dead card. So this card, it's good if it resolves, but it takes setup, and I don't like that. The other issue with these cards is that they are useless going second. You flip this into a board, it does nothing, they just pop it. You flip this into a board, like, how are you even going to do that if you don't have monsters on your field? They have a field, and you have nothing. So the reason I chose Defissure and Grave over these two is because Defissure hits just about everything in the meta. It's really, really good. The only decks it's not good against are shifter type decks, but Grave is often good against those type of decks, like Kashtira. And both of these cards are not only useful going first, they're also useful going second. Certain boards where you activate Defissure, you can force out negates, you can Whitewoods, you can make them waste a lot of resources if you activate this into their board, which is really cool. And then Grave is the same way, where if you flip Grave into a board, Whitewoods board, Kashtira board, whatever, it's very good going second. It can prevent your opponent from doing stuff going second. And this card is also an attack blocking floodgate. I'm still not playing Synchro Zone. I'm still not playing Messenger of Peace. I'm still not playing Scrubbed Raid. I really will die on the hill that those cards are not needed and they're not good. Both of these cards do what those cards do, but better. This one doesn't so much prevent attacks, but it locks your opponent into a position where they're not going to be able to kill you. And this one does, in fact, protect against attacks. So I think these cards in the main deck are a lot better than these two, basically. And better than Synchro Zone and all that stuff too. So then the rest of the floodgates, we got, of course, the one Rivalry, the one Gozen, the one TC Boo, and the one Skill Drain. I'm just glad the card didn't get banned. The deck is fine with it at 1, so that's not an issue. And then Gozen's still good. A lot of people were cutting that because it's not good against, you know, supposedly not good against Yubel, but that's not true. You can lock them into Fiendsmith Lights, you can lock them into, you know, Extract monsters, you can prevent Varudis from coming out, which is crucial. So Gozen's still really good. And all these are nice, and the reason, again, I don't play the Messenger of Peace, the Synchro Zone, is because these are more effective. These actually prevent your opponent from playing the game, rather than just saying you can't attack, because people will figure out a way to out that Synchro Zone if all they're restricted from doing is attacking. They still can play the game. These effectively accomplish the same thing, but better, because you're usually locking your opponent into like 1 monster or 2 monsters when you activate these 3. And if you can't prevent your opponent from beating over your cards when they are locked into only 1 or 2 monsters, then I don't really know what you're doing, because Runick is perfect at blocking attacks when your opponent is locked into 1 or 2 monsters. And then Skill Drain, same deal. I mean, if you have Skill Drain up, it's very unlikely your opponent's going to be able to beat over your stuff. Runick is just really good at blocking attacks. You don't need those cards, I'm telling you. So for the extra deck, triple copies of Huggin, obvious. Triple copies of Gary, pretty obvious. A lot of people go down to 2 Munin, but I like 3 of it because it's really good in the mirror. And since Runick didn't get touched besides Skill Drain, there's a lot of mirrors going around, a lot of White Forest Runick. So being able to summon this and prevent the Cosmics and the Runick Destructions preemptively is really good. And you can also summon this to protect from SP banishing your fountain as well. And I'm playing 2 Frecky because this is what you use if your fountains or tips get banished. This is the one you want to use in that kind of grind game situation because it'll recur your advantage. It accomplishes what fountain does when you don't have a fountain. It just adds stuff back from grave and continues to banish out your opponent, and it's a big beater too. So that, well, I was going to say that's it for the Runick monsters, but it's not. We got 1 Sleipnir. Pretty obvious there. No real need to explain 1 Sleipnir. Then for the links, I'm still playing the Spicy Haggard Lizard Rose. I don't see anyone playing this on Runick Stun, but it's really insane. If ever you have 2 monsters on your side of the field, whether your opponent gives you one or like, you know, with Gimmick Puppets or something like that, or if you summon Sleipnir plus another Runick monster and you want to clear the extra monster zone, you can just link them off for this, banish itself for cost. So even if this gets negated, it's still going to be able to remove itself from the field for cost. And then you can draw a card, which in this deck is super crucial because you can always draw into another Runick spell. And this can also let you clear the field for an evenly, something like that. Lizard Rose is really nice. And 1 SP, you don't really need this card, but it does come up, and hey, it's getting reprinted now, so maybe it'll be a little bit cheaper. Then 1 Typhon, this card is absolutely mandatory in stun decks, in my opinion, and it's getting cheaper now, so you have even less of an excuse not to own one. For the side deck, I'm doing triple copies of the Ball, and this card is just really insane. Everybody plays into it. They always summon 3 monsters. Sometimes they'll summon 2, and then they'll use their quick play Chimera Fusion or something like that to summon a 3rd on your turn, so they play right into it without even realizing it. It's just really nice. And I'm doing 2 Lava Golem right now. I don't really like that this conflicts with Duality, but it's kind of necessary because the only way to clear the Yubel board of Varudis and Dies Irae is to Kaiju or Sphere Mode it, or Lava Golem it. There's not a lot of ways that you can get over those cards without doing that, so it's just something that the format calls for, really. Then, speaking of things the format calls for is Spooky Dogwood, because everybody's got a time win con. Luckily, Lacrima got banned, so it's not quite as toxic as it was, but this deck has no way to stop your opponent from just comboing forever and burning you in time. So being able to do this, sometimes they'll pass turn and give you a chance, or sometimes they'll just make your life points go all the way up. This deck is really bad in time when you have to go second, so you need something like that. And then triple copies of Cosmic. This is here for the Mirror, for Runick White Forest, for whatever. You can actually stop the Desiree negate if you target the link that's equipped to it, because it checks on res, so you can use Cosmic for that. If I go into a Mirror, I feel much more confident if I have Cosmic than if I don't, that I'll stand a better chance. And then speaking of the Mirror, I'm still playing the Runick Allure. So people were teasing me about this card, saying like it's not good and stuff, but this is here for the Mirror. It's just for the Mirror. There's so many mirrors going around, and being able to speed up the milling, because usually the mirrors play 40 cards. Usually the White Forest builds still play 40. So every time you activate a quick play spell, you're milling an extra one, and every time they activate a quick play spell of their own, they're milling one. So having this in the mirror is a really big advantage. You're going to mill out your opponent and kill them a lot quicker. Your opponent will have to waste a destruction on this rather than hitting your fountain, which is good. And then the other thing that's really cool is you can use this to chain block your fountain with Munin rather than just Hugin. What that allows you to do is play around both Cosmic and a hand trap at the same time. With Hugin, you can only play around one or the other, or you can only play around hand traps, really, but you can summon Munin to protect against the set Cosmic, and at the same time chain block the fountain. So, weird situation, but it does come up. And then the last card in the deck is triple copies of Judgment. You really don't need Iron Thunder like in my other decks, because the Runick engine can protect its back row in and of itself, but having Judgment is just there to back it up, especially from evenly. So one other card I want to talk about that I don't play, because I don't play Amano Wado anymore, so I can't make rank 4s, but if you do still play that or Inspector Border or something, you can try this crazy card, Wonky Quartet. It's a really weird, complex card, but basically you give it to your opponent, it starts inhaling cards from the top of their deck, which mills them out, and then on the standby it gives itself right back to you, and then on your standby you inhale some cards from your deck, which sets up your graveyard for your fountain, and then you pass it back to your opponent, and you guys just keep passing back and forth until someone either finds a way to get rid of it. Basically, it's milling your opponent out and generating you graveyard resources. So it's something cool to consider if you still play Mono Wado or something, but just something I wanted to talk about. So that's the deck profile. Metasheep Slaughterhouse. The world is not a globe, it's a flat plane. Maxi can never come back. Golders look amazing. My toaster talks to me. Cigarette butts are perfectly fine to smoke off the ground at the bus stop. And yeah, Metasheep Slaughterhouse. Don't subscribe, unsubscribe, don't hit the notification bell, leave an angry comment, dislike, and send to all your worst enemies. Bye.